Welcome back! Today we're looking again at Goethe's Faust, and we're talking about two scenes this time, Witch's Kitchen and Street. And this marks a pretty significant change in the text. In our last scene, Mephistopheles took Faust to a tavern to see if that would liven things up for Faust, but it really didn't work. And so now, Mephistopheles is going to try a different tactic. After all, one of Faust's problems is the fact that he's an old man and can no longer really enjoy life. At least, he keeps complaining like that. And so the solution to that is to magically transform him back into a young man so that he can really enjoy himself and live life again. That's what we need the witch for in the Witch's Kitchen. The Witch's Kitchen is a traditional witch's kitchen full of hokey, weird, magic-y things, and Faust is really put off by all of this. I find this magic mongery abhorrent. Am I to be cured, you warrant, in this hodgepodge of lunacy? Do I seek counsel from some squirted quack? Will this absurd swill cookery charm 30 winters off my back? If that's your best, then woe is me. Duh. Mephistopheles says, well, really the only other way to stay young for 80 years is to go out and work really hard in the field and be a farmer. You know that hard work often helps people to stay young and stay fresh. Shout out to my grandfather-in-law who got up at 4 every morning to go into work until well into his 90s, and then he just moved into his office. That's some pretty intense work ethic, but it's kept him young. But Faust doesn't like that plan either. After all, he says, I don't think I can work that hard. I don't think I could do that. After all, it's kind of too late for me. And Mephistopheles says, well, back to magic then. Let's use a youth potion. But Faust is still really resistant. He says, I don't want to have anything to do with this weird witch lady, whoever she is. I just want to try to do it some other way. Can't you do it, Mephistopheles? Mephistopheles can't because he doesn't have the patience to stir the potion for as long as it takes to stir. One of the questions we might pose here is why Faust is so averse to the magic, when after all, just a few scenes ago, back in Night, he was getting excited about magic. What's the difference between Faust's magic and the magic of this scene? Well, Faust's magic was very lofty and spiritual. He's trying to conjure up the spirit of the earth and speak to it. He's trying to see these grand visions of the universe. And this is like, toad legs and nude eyes. It's gross and earthy and hokey. He wants that sort of elegant magic. And this is really just kind of nasty. But it's funny that Faust's first attempts at magic were very ineffectual. I mean, he managed to conjure the earth spirit, but that we can still class as a failure. And this magic actually works. It effectively makes him younger. Although what really revitalizes him in the scene remains to be seen. Worse than the weird kitchen thing is the creepy little monkeys in the kitchen. There are a pair of marmosets with their pups that are stirring the pot and doing things for the witch. They're her familiars or servants. And they can talk, which is really creepy. Everything they say sounds kind of half-sensical, not quite nonsense, but not really sense either. Mephistopheles greets them, asks them where the witch is, and they reply, and then he turns to Faust and he says, the dainty darlings, aren't they striking? And Faust is really creeped out by them, in quite the worst of taste, I find. Mephistopheles finds the little talking monkeys adorable, but Faust finds them really uncanny and uncomfortable. Why is this? Well, the key point is really referenced by Mephistopheles in his next line. Why, chat like this is just the kind that is most truly to my liking. Cute little monkeys can be cute. Little children that bumble and talk to you are cute, but when you kind of blend the two and you take an animal and make it kind of humanoid, these anthropomorphic monkeys are disturbing. But Mephistopheles loves it because this is his favorite kind of conversation. A conversation where the words don't really entirely mean anything, where you're more playing with language than you are clearly conveying ideas. And if you remember, that's kind of a nightmare for Faust. Faust dislikes the fact that language can be hollow and shallow. Instead, he's always seeking for the inner truth, the inner essence of things. And here these talking monkeys are doing all of this kind of semi-human talking without really having any meaning or sense. So Faust kind of steps back from them while Mephistopheles goes and hangs out and plays with them for a little while. If you've ever read the book Wicked by Gregory Maguire, there's also a talking monkey in that one. His name is Chistery. And the witch, Elphaba, teaches the monkey to talk. And he speaks in these semi-riddles, not quite making sense, but kind of making a kind of sense. And that book has some interesting themes about language and its connection to sentience. So I wonder sometimes if Gregory Maguire wasn't at least subconsciously influenced by Faust here. In any case, Mephistopheles begins to play with these monkeys, and he sits down on this fake throne, and they start giving him all these things and setting him up as almost a king here. He's being depicted as the Lord of Misrule, which is a tradition in Europe. The peasantry would be allowed one day where they got to set up their own king and make their own rules, and it was just a wild holiday of chaos. The rules could be anything, and so really anything went on this day. So in some ways, the monkeys and Mephistopheles are playing up the idea of chaos, the step away from order and the step away from meaning. Faust doesn't like this very much. But as Faust is stepping away from the monkeys, he turns and he sees a mirror, a magic mirror, which then shows him this vision of a woman. And this woman in the mirror is in some ways depicting the ideal beauty, the ideal of love. She might be Venus. She's certainly not a specific tangible woman, but she is an image of what maybe Faust really desires. It's kind of perhaps like that mirror in Harry Potter. But finally, for the first time in a really long time in this book, Faust kind of wakes up again, and he begins to get excited, and he begins to get moved. In the midst of all of this, the witch comes in through the chimney, and because the Marmosets have stopped stirring the pot and now they're playing with Mephistopheles, the pot boils over and causes a big mess, and the witch lands in it and gets very angry. She's upset at these intruders, and she starts to yell at them, but Mephistopheles reveals that he is in fact the devil, and he smashes a bunch of things in her kitchen, and shows her that he's boss. Once she realizes that he's a devil, she's very apologetic and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, master. So good to have you over." And they chat about how the vision of the devil appears different in different cultures and different times. The idea is consistent, but his imagery changes. And in the same old fashion, Mephistopheles and the witch are very rude and crass in the way they talk to each other, whereas Faust is still trying to distance himself from them and continue to be absorbed in this mirror. Mephistopheles tells the witch what he wants, and she has some hesitation, but Mephistopheles says, no, Faust will be fine. It won't hurt him. We'll just do a little charm and make sure he's okay. So the witch begins to give him a charm to protect him, but the charm doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
"Now mind me, son, make 10 of 1, with 2 have done, make even 3, and rich you'll be, let 4 go 5, and 5 and 6, contrive and hex to 7 and 8, that does the trick, and 9 is 1, and 10 is none, and there's your witch's arithmetic."
And Faust is like, what? What is she talking about? That didn't make any sense. Mephistopheles explains that no, it doesn't have to make any sense. Who cares about sense? Mystical, magic-y stuff really doesn't have to have any meaning. We might see this sort of shown up in like pseudo-science fiction shows where they just do a bunch of gobbledygook language and explain things away. My favorite was the old Doctor Who 70s where they would say, "Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow," and that would always fix the problem. It's just babble. And this draws us again into the theme of language, something we already just explored with the monkeys. Faust really doesn't like things that aren't getting closer to and being grounded in the truth and in meaning. And Mephistopheles eats up things that are really hollow and shallow and superficial and meaningless. And as the witch continues her spell and keeps going, Faust says, "What babble does she mouth before us? I'm about to lose my mind. She sounds to me just like a chorus of 100,000 fools combined." And Mephistopheles says, yeah, that's fine. You can go ahead and stop saying the chant. Which implies that it didn't even have any purpose to begin with. It doesn't even have to be finished. Faust drinks the drink and presumably begins to change. And Mephistopheles and the witch, as Faust finishes this, discuss the side effects. One of the side effects is that he's going to be really, really kind of excited about women for the next little bit. And Mephistopheles thinks that's really what he wants, is to run after a woman and have as much fun as he can with her. But is that really what Faust was doing when he was looking in this mirror and seeing this vision of beauty and love? Is Faust after love and beauty? Or is he after just having a good time, as Mephistopheles seems to think? As we close the scene, Faust is glancing back at the mirror and saying, "Oh, I just want to have one more glance. Just one more glance before into that mirror. That beauty was so fair, so fresh." And Mephistopheles replies, No, that paragon of women, Sarah, shall soon confront you in the flesh. No fear, with this behind your shirt, you'll soon see Helen of Troy in every skirt." Mephistopheles, as the devil, has really low sights, but we're going to see what influence this potion actually has on Faust. in the next scene. One more note on language before we go, though. There is a small instance of one of Mephistopheles' favorite linguistic tricks, which is to purposefully misunderstand people. And this is going to become much clearer in a scene coming up soon. But at one point, Faust is looking at the mirror and saying, "Alas, my mind becomes disjoint." In other words, mind blown. And Mephistopheles, who is not looking at the mirror but is looking at the monkeys, says, "By now this fairly has my own head spinning." As if they're talking about the same thing. Now we might think that maybe Mephistopheles just really misunderstands Faust and thinks Faust is talking about the monkeys. But that's unlikely. Mephistopheles enjoys mishearing what you say and interpreting it other than you intended. Kind of like a deconstructivist. Who cares about the intention? The language fails. The next scene, the street scene, is our first meeting with Gretchen, who's going to be an extremely important character in the second half of part 1 of Faust. And the scene opens with Faust bumping into her and saying, "Hey, you mind if we take a little stroll together?" And she very wisely says, "No thank you." "My fair young lady, may I make free to offer you my arm and company?" "I'm neither fair nor lady, pray. Can unescorted find my way." She sees right through his flattery and gets straight to the point and says, No, that wouldn't be a good idea. See ya. And walks away. Faust's response to this is kind of disturbing. He stares after her being like, "Wow, she's really lovely. So Faust stares after Gretchen for a few minutes leering, and then Mephistopheles walks up. And the very first thing that Faust says is, "Here, give me that young wench, for certain." What is wrong with him? And Mephistopheles is like, "That one? You sure? Because she's, really young and pure-hearted and stuff and not very easy to, manipulate." And Faust is like, "Psh, she's 14. And even though Mephisto kind of tries to get him to cool it a little bit, Faust is determined. He wants her, and he wants her now. He says, "Your pious worship, spare my ear with your wise proprieties and charters. Let me be plain, and hear me right. Unless I have that sweet delight nestling in my embrace tonight, the self-same midnight hour will part us. I want her now, or else we're done." And Mephistopheles is like, "You're ridiculous. You're crazy. Come, think what can be and what can't. A fortnight even would be scant to spy out chances, scheme ahead." And Faust says, "5 minutes with me and she'll be totally ready to do whatever." But Mephistopheles insists, saying it's really impossible. There's no way you can get her that fast. She's just too pure. And Faust says, "I want something of hers to keep as a trophy. I want to be able to see the room where she sleeps." And Mephistopheles is like, "Fine, we can go look at her room. Just calm down a little bit." And Faust says, "I want to go now." And Mephistopheles says, "No, we gotta wait until she's not there, okay?" So Faust settles for saying, "Get me a present for her right now." Why is Faust acting so weird? There are a few possibilities. One could be that growing younger has just made him really awful, or perhaps it is a side effect of the potion he drank in the witch's kitchen. After all, it did say that this potion and this other gift of a song that the witch gives him are going to have a similar side effect. Is this new Faust going to continue in this vein? Well, we certainly hope not, because he's really horrible. He's not very much like that old Faust who had lofty ambition and deep feelings. He's very physical and lustful and gross. We'll see, fortunately, that this isn't going to last too long. This is going to wear off and Faust will return something to his old self. But maybe we get to see for the first time that Faust has some potential for this really very negative side. One other important thing to note about this scene is this is our first glance of Gretchen. And so our first real description of Gretchen comes from Mephistopheles, similar to the way Mephistopheles was our first description of Faust back in the Prologue in Heaven. Mephistopheles describes Gretchen by saying, "I just happened by the curtain at her confession. She's just been pronounced absolved of any sin. She's a right innocent young lass, who brought mere nothings to confess. On her I have no hold at all." Not only is Gretchen very young, very innocent, very pure, but she's just come from confession, which means she's been absolved of her sin. All the sins that she had, she confessed, and now the priest has forgiven her. However, when she went to confession, she really had nothing to confess. She was confessing things like, "Oh, I was grumpy this morning before my coffee." Basically non-sins. So she's pure through and through. There is nothing that is going to lure her in for Faust. Or is there? We shall see as she becomes a more complicated character in the next few scenes. Next time we'll get to see a lot more about Gretchen and her character as we creep around in her bedroom. The Disney song for this particular episode is Bibbidi Boppidi Boo.
We are witches, monkeys, if you please. We are witches, monkeys, if you don't
crazy! Why is she talking like this? She's out of her mind!
Clippity-clappity-glue.
Thanks for watching. You can click up here to watch the previous episode, or click here to watch the next episode, or click down here on my bow tie to subscribe. And I'll see you next time.